can see if anybody signs in through Zoom to be an attendee.
Okay.
Right now I'm linking up to YouTube, so I don't have my Zoom window open, but a minute ago it was just Kelly Johnston.
Yeah, I see that list. Are we good to go?
I think so.
All
Do you
right.
see YouTube up in the corner?
Yes.
Yep, and we are live.
Where do you see
Welcome.
Where do you see that, Nick?
Up in the corner, it says, in the upper left-hand corner, it says live on YouTube.
that? I don't see that.
The little red box.
Oh, I don't
Some
have that
people-
either.
April couldn't see it yesterday either, so I don't know if it's a computer setup thing, or what that is, but that does indicate that we are live. So I think we are good to go.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's the March 31st Curriculum Committee meeting. I'm just going to turn it over to you, Monique, because I'm sure that you have far more important stuff to say than I do. Uh-oh.
Well, I just, what I've done in the agenda for folks who are able to access the agenda is I've provided a copy of what we're proposing to the school board, and I'll talk through that a bit. We refer to that as our school closure distance learning plan, which is a plan required by the state. And also just completed, I would say that the paint is barely dry on a proposal around grading and reporting. One of the challenges as we are literally reinventing education daily in this new environment is we're planning without knowing what an end date is. We have the school closure announcements from the superintendents, but as Governor Mills suggested, that we not look at what, as she quoted Wayne Gretzky, is that we don't look at where the puck is, we need to look at where the puck is going. So we are trying to do all of those things. We're trying to keep an eye on where the puck is and where it's going. And so in our school closure distance learning plan, you'll notice as we got started, and we've added this to our website as well, is that we recognize that distance learning can't replace in-classroom experiences. And so we want to be very careful about what we put in place, because we don't want to do harm. And we don't want to set expectations that our families and our students are unable to meet. And so we are trying to be as thoughtful as we can and provide answers to the many questions that are out there. In short, we worked really hard short term to make sure that our students and families had devices, particularly K-5. And so we sort of in the first week sort of put a pause on everything. We need some time to get up and running. Our goal is really to stay connected as a learning community, and that's going to continue right through the end of the year, depending on whether we're back or not. We also want to ensure that do what we can to ensure that the learning continues. There's a lot of questions out there about whether or not we're requiring new instruction or not. Early on, we were not requiring that because we could not ensure equity. Right now, knowing that we're going to be out for more time, we're looking towards our students, expecting our students to engage in these learning activities and actually start putting information into the grade books and such. So for example, K2, 3, 5, and 6, 8, what we've done at each grade level is we are leveraging the online resources we have, but I've made it very clear that there be online and offline activities, because we can't ensure that students have, even if they have internet, they may not have sufficient internet or reliable internet to engage in the online learning. And we have principals and teachers working very hard to assess that and find out from our students. And so they're in the process of doing that. That said, we've published 2 weeks worth of learning plans, which contain options for students and parents. At the high school, we've been working, communicating with students to, take a look at their Q3 stuff. Are you missing anything? Do you need some help? Wrap up some things so that we can finish out Q3. And so that's pretty much what we've been working on. Pretty honestly, the first week was really just trying to get those K-5 laptops out there, support people at getting logged in, support staff who had lots and lots of questions about how to organize and what we can do, both in terms of asynchronous but synchronous learning opportunities as well. And now we're going through and helping staff to not only learn those tools. I told the tech coaches, I said, you folks were looking for how you can increase the technological skills of your staff. Well, guess what? Everybody's climbing a huge learning curve right now. So you've got plenty of business. As a matter of fact, I had to pull them back. They were spending 8 and 10 hours a day trying to help people out. And for their own health, I had to ask them to cut back a little bit. Our IT department has done a phenomenal job at setting up emails and backup systems for all of our office functions, but particularly in an effort to help families and students and staff responding to all kinds of tech questions. And our tech coaches have also been added onto that helpline, so they can also help respond to some of the questions that staff have that our IT department may not be able to respond to. The special ed department has been working very hard at making sure, first of all, finding out what guidance is out there, but then also making sure that the special ed staff are and have the tools to support their students in this new environment and meet any requirements that are required of them. School nutrition, we've set up, IT has been awesome in setting up an email address and a phone number so that anyone struggling with food insecurity can be in touch. We've also developed a, utilizing our bus drivers, a delivery system for backpacks and for paper copies of things that need to be distributed. And we're working on all the kinks in the plans that we've set up. We are acting as quickly as we can, and we're assessing and we're adjusting as much as we can. Our number one priority is to keep people safe, and then do what we can to support folks. So in this learning plan, we've outlined employee expectations, and then articulate for all our categories of employees, articulated some information about facilities as well, but the bulk of certainly the work I've been doing is in and around the learning pieces, and helping to problem solve and troubleshoot a number of things that are happening out there. And I can, more than happy to answer questions that the committee might have around that. And then also talk a little bit about what our thinking is in and around grading and reporting for all the phase levels.
Thank you so much. You guys have done such an incredible amount of work, and we are so appreciative of that. I should have led with that, but thank you. It's truly amazing. And I will tell you anecdotally,
agreed.
my neighbor who is a teacher at one of the primary schools, and she just was raving about your tech coaches.
Thank you. I'll be sure to let them know that they've been working very hard at trying to support staff who feel the need to learn.
It sounds
we
like
all are.
they're working a ton, as you all have. I'm sure we have a lot of questions. And do you feel like, my first is, do you feel like you're in a good place curriculum wise?
I think we are. I think the piece that I want to communicate to folks is that, our expectations for the curriculum, our instructional calendars, all those things that we used as moorings are now gone.
Yeah.
And so what we are really trying to focus on is really just practical, sensible, reasonable ways to continue the learning and keep our students engaged in learning. And we're trying to provide resources in order to do that. I think that the weekly learning plans have really helped in that capacity. And the buildings are getting feedback from parents, and they're incorporating that feedback as they build their learning plans for the next week.
So you are getting a lot of feedback from families.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we are. And we're trying to respond to that as best we can. We're trying to keep it simple and stay practical and manageable with our expectations.
Are you finding the feedback to be on all ends of the spectrum of there's too much, there's too little, and everything in between?
Yes, there's a wide variety of feedback. You accurately described it. We have folks who want us to require everything. And then there are folks who are struggling to even, they're worried that they can't even do some of the options within the weekly requirements. And so we're trying to allay people's concerns that we very much understand that we need to be very, very flexible in this environment. And we certainly don't want to set up any expectations that will do harm to students or their performance. So flexibility is really the key term. We're really first off worried about students' health.
Yep.
And what we've tried to communicate is that we're concerned about students and families' social emotional health first, because the bottom line is stressed kids don't learn. And we certainly want to provide options and set expectations that we want students to engage in these learning activities, but we are also very well aware that depending on family situations, which are all different, our students may not be able to engage. And in particular, we may start seeing some behaviors, avoidance behaviors, and it's not that they don't want to, they just may not be able to because they're struggling to manage their own stress.
Yep.
And that's okay. So that's
Yep.
the perspective we're taking.
So one thing I just want to bring up, because I've been in a lot of Zoom conversations over the past couple of weeks at the state level, talking about this moment for public education. And first, I do want to acknowledge what you said, Monique, and I know we're being recorded. So I'll say that there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress with what's going on with COVID-19. But when you strip the virus and all of its effects out, there is an element of excitement to this, because we're looking at something, I think, in education. And I found myself earlier on a call with the state saying this line, so I'll say it now, which is, in some ways, in some areas, this is the kick in the pants that public education is needed. There are some areas where it's no longer a textbook. We've actually said it in this group. There's so much more to curriculum, but there are definitely areas of traditional academia that we're holding on to that. And when we get through this COVID-19 thing, and we will get through it as a community, as a state, as a country, there's no going back to the way and the kind of naivete some areas of education had. We will go back to in-class instruction. We will go back to a lot of the tried and true methods that we have, and we should. But there's no going back 100%, because what's happening now with the learning and the use of education, of technology and education to expand the way that we connect with students, to expand the way we evaluate students, to expand the way that we expose people to new pieces of information outside of kind of the sage on the stage traditional teacher model. There's no going back from that. So it's kind of exciting, I think, for us as a board, and certainly for the district, to think about, and as we go through each day and the stress of doing this for the first time, what can we take forward with us to enhance the student experience, and how can we diversify the way that knowledge is related to our students for generations to come, because this will redefine education as we know it.
Absolutely. I think that, there are going to be some gifts that come out of this. one of the things already in my conversations with folks, leadership teams, is that, wow, and that's really an evidence-based practice that we were trying to promote anyway. And now we've all got to do it or use it. You know, I don't remember the specific example, but a couple of times people were like, oh, wow, and that's an evidence-based practice that we're supposed to be trying. The other piece that I think people are, some people may not have stopped to realize is, and I know it was a realization for me, I'm like amazed at how much I have learned because I've had to learn it over in like almost no time. You know, while we sometimes in education want someone to provide the training, there are some things that I didn't know even existed. I had to go in there and poke around and be an independent learner and learn how to do that myself. And so I think we are going to find some gifts out of all of this. When things do get back to, I guess what we were called normal, but the way I'm choosing to look at things is this is our new normal for the time being.
Right.
Monique, I just had one question on internet access. So for the families who don't have it, I know that or have concerns around internet access, there was a number that people are calling, but if without you know, doing anything that's confidential, sharing anything that's confidential, would you be able to share with us some of the like methods we're using to get internet access to families who may not have it?
Sure. We have, Dawn, our IT person, has put together a complete document with a number of different options that we can share with families. And that has been shared out with families. And know that early on, our thinking was different because we assumed there would be lots of hotspots we could just pick up and distribute to families. And the demand has exceeded capacity. And so we're asking at this point families to reach out around those options. And if those options don't work, we'll keep looking for other options for folks. We also are really trying to check and double check and reach out to families to make sure that they might have internet access, but it might not be sufficient bandwidth. Is it reliable internet? On what kind of a device can you access your internet? And so schools have been very good and teachers have been very good about double checking all of these things, because we also have, we also may have people who don't want to step forward and say, I don't have internet access. So we're looking at some of our software applications and tracking numbers of students who are on there and trying to identify students who may not be on there and double checking to see why. So that we can make sure that students do have access, or saying that they do, especially if we don't hear from people.
I was just going to add that, you know, I think a lot of our schools are almost doing this child find search right now, right? In an effort to check to see, are they connecting to the internet? And if they're not, how can we loop back to find that reason and then offer support? But I think the good news is that we're finding that those situations are lesser than we might have anticipated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We were on a video conference call with area high school principals as we were all coming together to do some problem solving. And we are rather fortunate in that our numbers are such that they are. There were a number of schools out there across the state who are just trying to get in touch and find students at this point in time.
But one of the things we've done in the Maine community college system, and you, Scarborough may already have done this, and I may just be ignorant to it, is we've actually expanded our Wi-Fi access at all 7 of our campuses to expand significantly into the parking lots. so that our students can actually drive in, for those few that don't have internet, can actually drive in, park, stay in their car, and access high-speed internet so they can carry out their assignments. I don't know if that's something that we already have at our schools or something we're promoting. I just thought I'd share it.
I'm not sure where we are about promoting that exactly. I did share that idea a day or so ago with the IT department. And I do know of at least one situation where a student realized that they could, if they drove up close enough to a school building, they could access the network. That's something we're in the process of discussing moving forward as an idea to help expand that access for folks.
Looks like we lost Kristen.
Uh-oh.
Our Brady Bunch grid went down to 5.
No.
So I'm not sure if you've had
Just-
a chance to take a look at our learning plan, the distance learning plan that we need to send to the state. It's really fascinating because we've been working this plan as we've written it, and it almost feels like old news to us, except for the grading and reporting pieces of it. But we are really working the plan and adjusting as we're going along based on the feedback that principals and teacher leaders are hearing weekly.
Monique, you were saying earlier that you're in communication with area principals. Sandy, I know you've had lots of conversations with superintendents. I guess, how does our plan compare to that of local districts?
Yeah, and know also that regionally, our statewide curriculum leaders group has set up almost a shared Google Doc so people can share what they're doing in terms of their plans and how they're addressing, common issues. So there is wonderful sharing going on out there. I think that there are a number of districts who are using this same model of weekly plans. Depending on the district and their ability for online learning. It varies in terms of how much paper stuff is being sent home. We are really fortunate to be able to keep that at somewhat of a minimum. But we're all doing pretty similar things. Some school districts are requiring following the daily schedule. We chose not to do that because this is different and we wanted to provide more flexibility both to our staff and to our families and students. And so we really took a tact that for better or for worse really offers flexibility for families. The high school is considering offering some virtual office hours. The staff are, in order to be available at a certain time synchronously for their students. All in terms of the middle school, all teachers, all courses at the middle school have a Google Classroom, and most of the students at the middle school are using that. Not only for communicating, but posting and sharing work and assignments. So, and we are very careful about our learning plans to target a certain amount of time during the day, because no matter how well students manage their own stress, these are stressful times. And to ignore that and to require sort of business as usual in terms of a schedule, while one might argue that's comforting, we decided that it wasn't realistic for our students. So some school, it's all over the place, from a school schedule like it was in person to where we are in terms of flexible hours and targets for learning time.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize if this is like
I was just going to add, it's good to have the plans, but it's also the important piece is to listen to the teachers because they're the ones that are really implementing this work. And from what I've talked to superintendents about, that's a key piece to most of this. As we build it, the feedback loop is really critical. And I applaud Monique and the administrative team here because we're going slow to go fast. We don't have this all figured out today, but their feedback is important to us as we kind of go down this pathway and this journey.
Yeah, the rate at which this is going into place is just staggering for any organization, but particularly in education. I mean, I think about these kind of conversations, and if we were having it at the college under normal circumstances, somebody would say, well, we should pilot that in the fall, and then we could do it full next spring, and you'd be planning a whole year out in advance. And instead, we're having conversations like, yeah, get that up tomorrow. So it's incredible how people are responding and the rate at which we've, quite frankly, revved up progress in education over the past couple of weeks. It's staggering, it's overwhelming, but it's nothing short of heroic for those that are on the front lines.
It's really interesting because when we introduced this notion of weekly learning plans, in the first week, just because time was of the essence, we pulled together, and even before we were out of school, I had given our librarians, who are great resources, our librarians and our instructional coaches, the heads up, start gathering some resources, online, offline, and low resource. And that's when we decided to leverage iReady, the online instruction, because based on the diagnostic assessment, it targets students into a learning path that's appropriate for their learning level. And teachers can monitor that. Then what we did in the first week was the building principals worked with the instructional coaches to develop the initial week's learning plans. And then the next week, we included teacher leaders and offers for teachers to come together by grade level to develop more specific options for students by grade level. And one of the interesting unintended unexpected outcomes were comments from the teachers. Wow, this group planning is really neat. We should do more of this. When in fact, we had been trying to promote teachers working together and co-planning for years. And it took, that's a perfect example of suddenly people realizing, our staff realizing the benefits of just co-planning and developing learning plans for students together.
Find that across all grade levels?
That would be across K through 8 high schools. I think department heads are working with their departments, and teachers are looking for times to connect with each other on shared courses and similar courses. It's a little different at the high school because there may be one person and that's the only person offering a course. And in other situations, there may be 2 or 3 teachers who offer the same course. And so teachers at the high school are pretty good about connecting with each other on developing expectations for courses. They've done a lot of that work together. And that's part of their building goals the past couple of years. And so during this time, I'm assuming that's continuing and that teachers find that valuable.
I don't want to jump too far ahead. So if this is jumping too far ahead, just stop me by all means, because I very much appreciated the pace at which everything's been coming out. Will there be a point in time? At some point, right? We have to say, what does the fall look like? Where are these kids now? Where do they need to be? Like, I think I personally am having a hard time wrapping my head around when that comes into play, how we're going to manage that.
So here's the perspective or the stance that we're taking is that, because I've had questions from some parents, will my child be held back if they're unable to do this work? What if we don't come back to school? What will they all have to stay back? Well, they're not all staying back, K through 12. So, and so what we are, or I'm trying to be, again, looking for where the puck may be going. And thinking that we are going to need to do some scaffolding and shift our expectations. We are going to have to, when we do go back and come back into session, whether that be fall or late spring, we are going to have to assess students. And it doesn't mean giving everybody standardized tests, but we are going to assess what they know in relation to what the learning goals are for that course or that grade level or that content area. We are going to have to adjust our learning expectations, and come fall, we are going to have to do some what we call scaffolding or review or remediation, depending on where our students are at, and differentiation in order that we can help all students get to where they get to where, not where they need to be, but get to where we would like them to be. So it is going to be a process. We're the ones that are going to have to adjust, not the students. I mean, that's really the stance that we're taking. We are going to have to think about what kinds of experiences we're going to be offering to help students transition back in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. I'm imagining the teachers are already teaching to such a wide, I don't know, just a huge variance in skill sets. I imagine that's going to grow even larger. And I think I saw a little bit of it because I sat in on the finance committee meeting the other day, but are there going to be a lot of budget implications in terms of this piece of curriculum and making sure that we have everything we need to transition everybody back?
We're still puzzling all of that out.
Okay, that's what I said. I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah, we're still puzzling all of those pieces out. I'm still thinking in terms of if we have a school calendar year that starts out in the fall with 177 student days, what can we accomplish within that time? And what training will our staff need in how to differentiate and how to engage our students and have them take ownership of where they are and what they need to do. And there are some very effective strategies to do that, and help teachers to run classrooms where there are there's small group instruction going on and students are working on different things all within the same classroom. And that is a way to move that forward. So having the time with the teachers to help them adjust to a wider range of students within their classrooms will be a necessity. But I really think that our teachers are really up for that challenge. It can be done, and if it can be done by anyone, it can certainly be done by the quality of the teachers that we have.
Absolutely.
And there may not be an answer to this question before I ask it, so I'll say that up front. I know that there are some districts around the state, I believe Brewer is one of them, that's now officially telling their community to prepare for this year to conclude outside of the school buildings. Sandy, from your conversations with the superintendents, how close is that decision to being wide scale? I imagine the sooner that would happen, the better it would be to start our planning to what Monique's talking about. I'm just kind of wondering how far away that decision is.
You know, we've kind of gone slow to go fast. I know Bangor, I think, came out and said school's going to be off till the end of the year. We're trying to be consistent in Cumberland County. And so actually we have a meeting this week and we'll probably be talking about pushing this out another couple of weeks. It's sort of like you don't want to get embarrassed, because if you did cancel school and then this really turned around for the best, you feel bad that it's an extended long summer. At the same time, we don't want our heads in the sand, and we kind of can get a picture that this is going to continue on for quite a while. So I think I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, Nick, but I think it's really a group decision with Cumberland County superintendents. They've got the antennas up on this. I suspect it's going to continue on. Whether we go into June or not, I really can't give you an answer.
That is something, actually, I'm glad you said that out loud. I just want to reiterate something you just said. I've heard from friends of mine and colleagues of mine how impressed they are with how unified the Cumberland County districts have been, that how much easier that makes for us to think about what that means for our community, because our town borders do not define our community. So I do want to thank you and all your colleagues who are really working together to make these decisions as consistent for our county as possible, because I think that's making a big difference. I really do.
So Monique, this is what you'll also go over with the full board at our meeting on Thursday. Was that
Yes.
the intention? Yeah. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you need from us as a board that will help you?
I think that it would be helpful to think of all the potential questions. And that's why I'm sharing these two documents with you today. Between now and the school board meeting, it would be helpful if you have an opportunity or could take some time to look through those and share questions with me. I could be able to then address those in some slides or with the full board. And that might be more efficient at that point in time. One of the things that I've noticed these days is people have lots of questions and they want answers right away. And so that might help to do that.
Okay, we can do that.
And I think the difficult thing is recognizing upfront that the plans that we put forward have been extremely thoughtful, but we also have to recognize they are not going to mirror the face-to-face experience or grading or all of the curriculum that our students would have gotten had they had face-to-face time. So I think that those are some really important givens that we have to recognize from the onset, that we're working really hard to be realistic about what we think all of our students can do. And I think as we create a distance learning plan, it really is with equity in mind, so that we are being thoughtful of the myriad of students that we have, knowing that they're all coming from different circumstances and experiencing different kinds of challenges at this time.
Absolutely. In my conversations with building principals, particularly in and around the grading and the reporting recommendations or proposal, what I hear our folks saying, which is true, well, most of our kids are going to be okay with, and most of our families want, and the majority of our families and the majority of our students. And I listen to those things and I agree. And I have to then say, yet that's not all of our students. And so we do have students who are homeless and are going to be at even more of a disadvantage without having that, this safe place, physical place called school. And we are working very hard at keeping an eye on all of our students, but we certainly don't want to set up recommendations and expectations that are going to, again, do harm. And so we're being very careful around that.
Are we able to get to those students though? Is everyone had some contact with the schools?
We're working on making sure that they do. So I can't tell you that everyone has been contacted and we know where every single child is, but I would say we know where quite a few are. So for example, one of the things we talked about today at our leadership council meeting was in and around what's our process? How long do we wait if we don't hear from a student? So teachers are reaching out to students. If they're not hearing from students, they are accessing guidance to reach out. and their principals to reach out. And if those folks are unable to make contact with students and we don't know anything else about the family, in some cases, reaching out to another principal or a sibling's teacher to find out what's going on might be a way to do that. But then we will get to the point where we contact Scarborough PD to do a wellness check, and we have already done that on at least one occasion. So we are working very hard to make sure we have contact and know where and how our students are doing.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have questions? Nick, Sarah, you good?
Nope, I think, Kristen, it might just be good to send a note around to the rest of the board members just to say to make sure they have a look at this, because we actually talked about this in our finance committee meeting yesterday on how to make these Zoom meetings most effective. And one way to do so is to make sure that we have as many questions as possible compiled ahead of time. So I don't know if we want to create like a running list of questions or things that people have, just so Monique is prepared.
And I believe I haven't had taken the time today to check in. I think that Kelly Johnson has sent this extended school closure document out to the board. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. And so
Yep.
what I did in the effort to avoid sending more and more stuff is I placed the grading and reporting portion in this document as a link. So they'll be able to see both.
Okay. Kristen just texted, said her internet just went out. Speaking of internet connectivity, but that she'll circulate it to the board. Make sure they get questions and stuff like that to you ahead of time, Monique, as many as possible.
That would be awesome.
Cool. I don't have any more questions, Nick. Do you? I think we can probably close the meeting on Kristen's behalf.
I'm good.
Thank you so much. I would just like to thank you for your time. I know these are busy times for everyone.
They are.
Well, thank you guys. You guys are the heroes in this. So thank you very much.
Oh, she's back.
Oh, she's back and we're gone.
Are we all done?
I think so.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye.